Hello and welcome back to the channel. As always, I'm your host, Morgan. Before we jump into the topic for today, I just want to pause and say this video is supposed to go up on January 6th, which is the day that bids are going to be made public for the lease sale for the oil drilling in the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. So I will be doing an update video on that situation in the coming days, so keep an eye out for that. I know there has been a couple of articles published about that recently, talking about how we still don't know anything, but I don't think that's enough information to actually make a video update until we have more information. So without further ado, let's talk about a spam text I got on New Year's Eve. Now, that may seem a little bit out of left field, and why does any of this matter? But the text I received had a link to it. And normally I don't click on links in text because that's just a bad idea. But this one was talking about weight loss. And because it's New Year's and everyone's setting goals, and weight loss is one of the very common goals set as a New Year's resolution, I got curious and wanted to see what pill or what product or what diet this was pushing. Because while I don't follow fad diets, I do like to know what ones are prominent so that I know what my loved ones may be attempting to do. So the link took me to an article very similar to the screenshot you should be able to see on screen somewhere around here now. And if you notice, this is an article claiming that this miracle weight loss pill naturally burns fat, got a massive deal from the moguls in Shark Tank. Now, this particular article was dated December 31st, so the day I was writing this outline, the day I got the text. I don't remember specifically what the article I opened in that text was dated. I don't think I actually saw a date on that one. But the things that they had in common was that they had the same headline, the body of the articles were fairly similar, and the news sites they're from had URLs written to make someone think that it's from a reputable or more reputable news source like Yahoo or Fox. However, this article is linked down below, so you can go ahead and take a look at it. If you notice, while it looks like it may be from Yahoo News, the URL is actually not Yahoo News. So this article basically was claiming, and there are many, many others that are almost the exact same text, with a few alterations, of course, but essentially the same article. And what their claim is that there's this keto pill that has been endorsed and invested in by all the members of Shark Tank. However, this is actually not true. This is a scam that has been going around at least since 2019, according to this article that is also linked down below, that actually goes into the scam itself and links you back to the Snopes page. And so this particular keto diet pill scam that's been endorsed by the Shark Tank moguls has been going around at least since the end of 2019. So the scam itself is at least a year old, or more than a year old at this point. And so the article here that basically debunks the one that I just showed you and tells you about the scam is, while not from like a news source, it is actually from a reputable source, in that it is from Good Housekeeping. And while Good Housekeeping is not technically a news source, they do have a reputation. So this is a scam. No Shark Tank historical endorsement has ever come towards one of these keto diet pills. So keep that in mind as we're moving forward here. Now that we've established that this miracle diet pill being associated with Shark Tank is in fact a scam, they're not associated with Shark Tank. They're just taking advantage of a recognizable show and the backup of their moguls and investors to sell this, especially in the new year, especially when weight loss is a very commonly set resolution for people. They want to sell their product. So what exactly is this pill claiming to do? So first up here is a screenshot directly from the website linked in that scam article to this pill. So One Shot Keto is what it's called. And so you can see here it says burn fat for energy, not carbs, release fat stores, increase energy naturally, love the way you feel. All very common things for this type of pill and for the keto diet in general, which we will get into in a little bit. But if you scroll down on that website, they actually have like a what does this pill do thing. And basically breaking it down from all the word salad that they have in that section, they claim that you're going to lose 5 pounds in the first week, which may or may not be healthy. Different people can lose different amounts of weight in different periods of time in a healthy manner. 5 pounds in the first week may or may not be healthy. And then they also claim a loss of up to 20 pounds in the first month, which again, may or may not be healthy depending on your own body. And then it claims to stabilize appetite, which pretty much every diet pill claims that. And this is pretty standard for any miracle diet pill. And they claim that there's scientific evidence for their claims. And what evidence do they say? Well, they say that they were recently talked about in a recently published study in diabetes, obesity, and metabolism. Now, diabetes, obesity, and metabolism is an actual scientific journal. It has an impact factor of a little more than 6, so they are reputable. And this is a journal that is centered around the study of diabetes, obesity, and metabolism. So that particular niche of medical science. And when I Googled the journal name with the pill name and even went through a couple of different scholarly search engines filtering by this journal, it wasn't bringing me to anything. And the more general web searches were actually bringing me back to that order website. So I went to the journal itself and just searched the pill name, searched the brand name, and their recent articles. So their recent publications, even if it was behind a paywall, you should at least still be able to see the abstract. However, this screenshot here is the page that I was brought to. If you notice, 0 results for One Shot Keto. I tried the spelling a couple different ways because I know that searches in scientific magazines can be kind of picky, but nothing. And so their claim that they have been featured in a recent study published in this magazine is also a lie, which isn't very surprising since they're part of this whole claiming to be affiliated with Shark Tank scam. So it's not like I was expecting a study to actually happen. To my knowledge, there are basically no reputable scientific studies on any of these miracle diet pills. It just doesn't happen. But I did my due diligence and I wanted to actually see if that claim was true and just be like, I actually looked it up. So this is a lie. There's no study published in this journal on this miracle product. So that's one lie. So their claims should be taken with a grain of salt as well, because they are also allegedly likely to be not as true as they claim to be. So before we really move on here, why am I talking about this? Why do I care about another miracle weight loss pill with no actual evidence to back it up, no real science behind it? Well, this is a predatory tactic that's going to be used by these companies to sell their crappy products. And especially in this time when people are making resolutions for the new year. And like I've mentioned, weight loss is a big one. I don't have the actual statistics on different resolutions because I just don't care that much. I personally don't really make resolutions. because in my own personal anecdotal history, resolutions that I make end up being broken in the first couple of months anyway, and I think it puts too much pressure on that beginning of the year. But I digress there. That's neither here nor there for this discussion. So, since this is a time when people are making those resolutions, fad diets and miracle pills that ultimately only waste money and put your own health in jeopardy are pushed with these blatant lies, and people are more likely to fall for them because it's new year, new me, the resolutions are happening, and if there's a product that can help you get that weight loss that you promised yourself in the new year and get it fast, then I'm going to try it. And again, it's blatant lies. And fad diets, we all know, are not a good thing. They end up with yo-yo dieting, and this particular pill is associated with a fad diet that is particularly troubling, especially for biologists. And it's a fad diet that has been holding on for quite a while now. Usually fad diets kind of die out in a year or so. But this one, specifically the keto diet, if you haven't picked up that I'm talking about that right now, let's get it out in the open. We're going to be attacking the keto diet from here on out. Now, the keto diet specifically is this fad diet that keeps being pushed as super healthy, burn fat, not carbs, blah, blah, blah. But there are these serious risks that are not talked about when these experts talk about the keto diet and try to push it on other people to help them with their weight loss goals. So let's talk about that now. First things first, what exactly is the keto diet? What exactly is the keto diet, and what exactly does it claim? Well, the keto diet is essentially a very low carb, very high fat diet. So basically you eat very little or omit carbs entirely from your diet, and instead you eat these high fat foods. And what this is supposed to do, according to the keto diet, is it's supposed to train your body to burn fat for energy instead of glucose. I believe they specifically usually say sugar, but glucose is sugar. Sugar, if you've watched my Bio for Beginners series where I'm talking about the molecules of life, carbohydrates are sugars. Glucose is one of the most simple sugars that your body breaks down. And so they're saying that your body will learn to burn fat instead of sugar, instead of glucose. We're going to be saying glucose here because that's going to be important in a couple minutes. And the next claim is that fat is the ultimate source of energy for your body, and that glucose, sugar, is unhealthy. And since your body can make its own glucose to maintain those blood sugar levels, it doesn't matter. And you'll enter a state known as ketosis, where your body's burning fat instead of sugar. Okay. So yeah, technically when you enter ketosis, your body is burning fat. However, what ketosis actually is and what ketosis actually describes is an increase in the level of ketones or ketone bodies in your blood and in your urine, because those are a byproduct of burning and breaking down fat. But we will get into that in a little bit. And then the final claim is that ketones are healthy and good for your brain. So you want to enter ketosis. You want more ketones. So we're going to need to unpack all of this, and it's going to take a little bit because we're going to have to talk a little biochem to be able to actually really understand what's going on and what these claims are saying and what they're ignoring. So first things first, your body can make glucose. That is absolutely true. And the thing is, your body makes it through a process called gluconeogenesis. And about now, we should be seeing a diagram popping up that shows you two very basic metabolic pathways, one called glycolysis, one called gluconeogenesis. And if you'll notice, They are essentially opposites of each other, with a few side steps in the process here and there, because there are some parts of glycolysis that are irreversible, so gluconeogenesis has to get around it with a different enzyme and a slightly modified pathway. But for the most part, they're opposites. And if you'll notice, the parts in glycolysis where your body actually produces ATP, ATP is the energy that cells use, so ATP equals energy in this case. Glycolysis produces a small amount of ATP per glucose molecule. If you notice gluconeogenesis in those moments where you're producing ATP with glycolysis, gluconeogenesis is using ATP. So your body needs to use energy to make the glucose, which that makes sense. If it's the opposite of breaking down glucose, and breaking down glucose yields energy, of course making glucose is going to use energy. But here's the other thing I would like you to notice. Pyruvate is the molecule that's needed to kind of go backwards from that end part to get back to glucose. So normally in glycolysis, you go from one glucose molecule to two pyruvate molecules. Gluconeogenesis goes from pyruvate to glucose. And pyruvate is an important molecule because it's going to be the precursor of acetyl-CoA. And acetyl-CoA is the molecule that needs to enter the citric acid cycle. The citric acid cycle is where the majority of the ATP or energy that your body needs is made. We're not going to get into the steps of that because that's not relevant today. And if you really want to, go back to my Bio for Beginners series where we talk about these important metabolic pathways. What we need to know here is that why would your body run this process if it actually is costing energy in the long run and keeping it from making energy? Well, glucose is that optimal source of energy for the brain. It's going to be the easiest molecule for those cells to break down and produce energy. Every single cell of your body is going to make its own energy for the most part, little asterisk. However, certain cells can only import certain types of energy, or it's easier for them to import molecules to make that energy. Your brain, it's much easier for it to produce its energy from glucose than it is with the fat. But we'll get into that in a little bit here. So when you don't intake enough glucose, your body needs to make it to keep your brain functioning properly. And that's one of the reasons the gluconeogenesis happens. It's to check itself. It's to keep your blood sugar stable. It's to keep your brain functioning properly. Of course, there's more to it than that, but that is the big point here. So yes, your body can make its own glucose, but it does require energy and it does put strain on your body that it wouldn't normally be put under. Of course, this process is always going to be run to some level. It never stops entirely, so it's always run at some level. However, it can be increased by actions you take, by not eating enough, by not eating the right things enough, and not giving your body what it needs. So let's talk a little bit about fat as energy. Why is fat a thing? Why is it not necessarily inaccurate to say there's a lot of energy stored in fat? So yeah, it's true, fat is a source of energy. And the reason that these fats are a thing, the reason why your body keeps so much fat is that because sugar can only be stored for a very limited amount of time in muscles, and it kind of needs to be burned because, as I said, it can only be stored for a very limited amount of time. Fat is the solution to that. Fat can be stored long term, but the metabolism to break it back down is not as simple or as efficient as that sugar metabolism is. So fat happens, because it's how your body stores that excess energy. When you're taking in more than your body needs, it's going to store more for a rainy day kind of deal. Now, again, everyone's own metabolism is different, and that's important to keep in mind. But fat is basically excess stores just in case. So how exactly is fat broken down? How is that energy harvested from the fat? Well, it's going to be harvested through a process called beta oxidation. Beta oxidation is a little more energy intensive than the glycolysis. It's not quite as pretty and streamlined because there's a lot of going back to the beginning and cutting that molecule up. We're not going to get into the specifics of it, but basically what it happens is it takes that fatty acid, as you can see here in the diagram, and it's going to it's usually condensed into about 4 steps, just kind of cut the molecule up into little pieces of acetyl-CoA until it can no longer produce any more, until it's too short to keep cutting up. And the reason why that happens is basically because the kinds of bonds change back and forth and break. But, again, that's not really relevant right now. So the thing about this is it produces acetyl-CoA. A lot of acetyl-CoA. In fact, too much for the citric acid cycle to process, which that might be like, oh, cool, so much energy. That's why we feel so much better. Well, what does this excess acetyl-CoA do? Because it can't really just hang out in that form. That molecule needs to be changed into something else. So what happens is it ends up being changed into these things known as ketone bodies or ketones. And the ketone bodies are the things that your body can actually move around in the blood to different cells, into different places, so the energy can be used because they can be formed and then degraded. However, certain ketone bodies like acetone do need to be removed from the body because they are not good for you. They can be toxic. And so why would your body produce something that could be toxic? Well, ketone bodies, since they come from the breaking down of these fat stores, they're basically a source of emergency energy in times of starvation. The fat stores are for when you're in starvation. And again, remember, saving for a rainy day, your body wants to protect itself. That's kind of how life works. And while it is true that you usually do have some amount of ketone bodies in your bloodstream at any given time, I believe the number is about 3%, but don't quote me on that one. And they are an emergency energy. They can be what's known as neuroprotective, which means good for the brain, since they're basically there to give your brain that emergency energy in times when there's not enough glucose to power it. You still need energy for your brain. Your body, whether you're asleep, whether you're awake, carries out a lot of processes that keep you alive, and your brain is needed to make those signals because your brain is that big old powerhouse that keeps everything going. And yes, there is evidence that ketone bodies and these ketogenic diets, so the high-fat, low-carb diets, may be used to treat things like epilepsy. However, despite that fact, this research is still very new, and these neuroprotective properties of ketones are still very unknown. There's still a lot more questions than we have answers. So this first kind of abstract here from one paper that I would like to show you that is linked down below, that I think you can read the whole paper for free. I don't think it's behind a paywall, but if not, the abstract actually sums it up very well. And this was looking at ketone bodies, ketogenic diets, and how they're this emergency energy, and looking at the evidence for their treatment for things like epilepsy. And the thing that I would like to really draw your attention to is kind of these last few sentences in this abstract. Actually, let's just read the whole abstract here. Glucose is the main energy substrate for neurons. However, at certain conditions, e.g. in starvation, these cells could also use ketone bodies. This approach is used in clinical conditions as the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet is actually a biochemical model of fasting. It includes replacing carbohydrates by fats in daily meal. Synthesis of ketone bodies, beta hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate, and acetone begins once glycogen stores have depleted in the liver. Glycogen is the molecule that your body uses to store sugar. So it's basically a sugar that's stored. However, it can't be stored for as long as fats can. Ketogenic diet can be used to treat clinical conditions, primarily epilepsy. So they do that. They do that for conditions like epilepsy. They already know that it can be beneficial for that. The mechanism of neuroprotective action of ketogenic diet is not very clear. It is shown that ketone bodies influence neurons at 3 different levels, namely metabolic, signaling, and epigenetic levels. So yeah, it's clear that they're doing something. We're not sure what. Ketone bodies are not always neuroprotective. Sometimes they can be toxic for the brain. Ketoacidosis, which is very dangerous, complication of diabetes, mellitus, or alcoholism, can be taken as an example. The exact mechanism of how neuroprotective properties of ketone bodies reverse to neurotoxic is yet to be established. So that's the thing. Well, yeah, they are being used to treat things like epilepsy. This diet is being used to treat things like the epilepsy. Ketone bodies can be toxic. They are known to be toxic, and we're not entirely sure what flips the switch from good to toxic. But let's move on a little bit. You notice how ketoacidosis is best known for the diabetic ketoacidosis. And basically what it does is it just kind of messes with your body in very negative ways. It can come on very suddenly and result in mortality, so death. And while it is most known as the diabetic case for ketoacidosis, there is at least one non-diabetic ketoacidosis example. Specifically in this 2015 case study, we're not going to read this entire abstract, but basically it's here for you. And again, the whole article is linked down below if you are curious. It's basically a lactating mother switched to a very low carb, high fat diet, so a ketogenic diet, and ended up in a state of ketoacidosis. Again, there's still a lot more questions than we have answers, because things like this, you're not generally going to test on people. There are ethical considerations in science with things like that. So there's a lot of we don't knows. But basically, it is suggesting that these long-term effects of increased ketone production could be very negative. They could be very bad for you. But again, they're not entirely understood by medical science. So the takeaway I want you to have here is that please don't waste your money on these miracle weight loss pills. And if you are going to try a diet like the keto diet that can in some circumstances be very healthy and even beneficial, please consult your doctor first. And don't just trust what these pretty people on the internet say when they're pushing this diet. While, yes, reducing carbs is usually a good thing, and at least in the United States, we eat way more carbs than we actually need. I mean, girl knows I love bread, but any major change to your diet like that, you should consult a medical professional that can help you monitor that. The keto diet is not some miracle diet. It's not some miracle way to train your body to burn fat and just don't ever eat carbs. you're actually starving your body of a nutrient you need and putting it under strain that it doesn't need. While, yeah, there is evidence that ketone bodies may help the brain in some cases, we don't understand why that's a thing. We don't understand the long-term effects. And glucose is not the enemy. Sugar is not the enemy. But anything, when not consumed in moderation, can be bad for you. So it really does make me sick that so many people push the keto diet as this miracle, train your body to burn fat, not carbs thing, when there are these negative health implications that we don't entirely understand. And when you're not eating a balanced diet, your body is going to be infected in other ways. And it's one of those things that as a biologist really bothers me. And I know this is one of the pet topics that my biochemistry professor was really disturbed about as well, because we just don't know what the long-term effects of producing an elevated amount of ketone bodies really is on your own body. And that risk of going into ketoacidosis is a real risk. And while it may not be common and while it may take a while to get there, it is something that you need to be aware of. So if you're going to try a low-carb, high-fat diet, I'm not saying don't reduce the amount of carbs you eat. I'm saying please be smart about it. Please talk to your doctor. Please talk to a nutritionist or just talk to a medical professional. Please let them know what you're doing. Please know the risks. And don't jump in blindly to a fad diet because some influencer told you to, or because they say that that's what they do. Chances are they are being monitored by a medical professional in case things go bad, because something like the keto diet can go very bad because you're removing one of the essential nutrients from yourself. Just because your body can make glucose doesn't mean that you should increase the amount of glucose that your body needs to produce on its own. Glucose is still important. Consuming glucose is still important. Now, of course, if you are diabetic, if you have epilepsy and your doctor has put you on a ketogenic diet, please continue with that. Again, advice from medical professionals trumps what you hear from some stranger on the internet. With all that being said, I hope that you are so far enjoying 2021, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, evening, afternoon, what have you. Please keep a lookout for more updates on that oil drilling situation in the Arctic Wildlife Refuge, as I will be updating on that periodically when information comes out. And please take a moment to go ahead and check out my Instagram, Twitter, all that lovely stuff. Stalk me on the internet. That's totally cool. And I will see you all in the next one.
Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell if you would like to see more. And if you'd like to follow me on any of my other social medias, the links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check out thereptilegoth.com for all of my articles and blog posts. If you found any value in this video and you would like to help support the channel, please check out my Patreon page. That link is also in the description down below. And a special thanks goes out to my Diamond Dragon patron, Diane V. What you're doing is really helping me fund a dream here. I will see you guys all in the next one.